Why Thai people avoid direct confrontation. A sleep story in 5 chapters. Chapter 1. The silence at the dinner table. Before I came to Thailand, I believed something very simple. I believed Thai people avoided direct confrontation because they were afraid to speak honestly, afraid to say no, afraid to disagree, afraid to make things uncomfortable. That was what I thought. I was a journalist from Canada, raised in a culture where directness was often mistaken for honesty. If someone disagreed, they said so. If something was wrong, they pointed it out. If a problem appeared, people gathered around it like mechanics around a broken engine and began naming every damaged part. So when I first arrived in Thailand, I misunderstood the quiet spaces between people. I mistook silence for weakness. I mistook softness for avoidance. I mistook a smile for surrender. And then, one rainy evening in Chiang Mai, at a wooden dinner table beneath a slow-turning fan, I began to understand that I had been wrong. The house belonged to a woman named Mae Lada. She was not my mother, of course, but everyone called her Mae. Even grown men with silver hair called her that. Even the neighbors, even the children who ran barefoot through the lane outside her house. Her home stood at the edge of a small village, where the road became narrow and the mountains turned blue in the distance. Banana leaves leaned over the fence. A rooster slept beneath a bamboo basket. Somewhere behind the kitchen, rainwater dripped steadily from the roof into a clay jar. The evening smelled of lemongrass, wood smoke, and wet earth. Inside, the family sat on woven mats around a low table. There was sticky rice in a bamboo basket, grilled fish wrapped in banana leaf, a bowl of warm soup with herbs floating on the surface, small dishes of chili paste, vegetables, and omelet cut into soft golden squares. I had been invited because I was writing about village life in northern Thailand. At least that was what I told myself. But really, I was learning how little I understood. Mae Lada's son, Arun, sat across from me. He was about 30, quiet, kind-faced, with hands darkened by work in the fields. Beside him sat his younger sister, Mae, who had just returned from Bangkok after several years away. At first, dinner was gentle. People passed food quietly. Someone laughed about a dog stealing fish from the market. Rain tapped on the roof like soft fingers. The fan hummed above us, turning the warm air in slow circles. Then Molly said something. She said she did not want to stay in the village. The table became still, not silent exactly. The rain continued. The fan continued. A spoon touched the bowl. A child outside called to another child. But around the table, something changed. In my country, someone would have asked immediately, "Why? What do you mean? Are you serious? Did something happen?" But Mae Lada did not ask. Arun did not argue. No one raised their voice. Mae Lada simply picked up a piece of fish, placed it gently onto Molly's plate, and said, "Eat first. The soup is still warm." I watched this with confusion. To me, it looked like avoidance. A serious thing had been said. A daughter had announced she wanted to leave, and everyone acted as though the soup mattered more. Molly looked down at her plate. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but then she ate, slowly. The conversation moved elsewhere. Someone mentioned the rain. Someone talked about the price of mangoes. Arun asked me if Canadian winters were truly as cold as people said. I answered, but my mind stayed with the sentence that had disappeared into the room. I do not want to stay in the village. Later that night, after dinner, I stood outside beneath the roof edge. The rain had become lighter. Mist drifted over the dark fields. The village was quiet, except for frogs and the soft creak of bamboo moving in the wind. Arun came to stand beside me. For a while, we said nothing. Then I asked carefully, "Why didn't anyone talk about what Molly said?" Arun looked at me, not offended, only thoughtful. He leaned against the wooden post and watched the rain fall from the roof. Then he said, "We heard her. I waited." He smiled faintly. In Thailand, sometimes we do not answer quickly because feelings are still hot. I turned toward him. "Hot? Yes," he said. "Like soup. If you touch it too fast, you burn your mouth." He laughed softly at his own example. Then his voice became gentle again. My sister just came home. Maybe she is tired. Maybe she is disappointed. Maybe she wants someone to understand before someone gives advice. I looked back toward the house. Through the open window, I could see Mae Lada washing dishes slowly, her shoulders bent beneath the yellow kitchen light. Arun continued, "If we argue at dinner, everyone loses face. My mother feels hurt, my sister feels trapped, I feel angry, then nobody listens." He paused. "But if we wait, maybe tomorrow we can talk with cooler hearts." Cooler hearts. The phrase stayed with me. In the West, I had been taught that truth should arrive quickly. Straight lines were respected, clear answers were admired. Silence often made people nervous. But here, silence seemed to have another purpose. It was not always empty. Sometimes it was a bridge, a place where anger could pass without becoming a wound. That night, I lay beneath a mosquito net in the small guest room. Rain whispered against the leaves outside. Somewhere far away, a motorbike passed along the wet road and faded into darkness. I thought about all the times I had called people indirect. Too polite, too quiet, too careful. I had never asked what they were protecting. Maybe Thai people did not avoid confrontation because they were afraid of truth. Maybe they avoided damaging the relationship that truth still had to live inside. The next morning, I woke to the smell of rice steaming in the kitchen. The rain had stopped. The world outside looked newly washed. Drops of water clung to banana leaves. The mountains were pale blue under a soft gray sky. Molly was sitting on the steps, drinking coffee from a small glass. I sat beside her. For a while, we watched chickens move through the yard. Then she said in English, "You think we don't talk about problems?" I felt embarrassed. Maybe I did, I admitted. She smiled, but not in a mocking way. "My brother told me you asked." "I'm sorry." "No," she said. "It is okay. Many foreigners think that." She wrapped both hands around the glass. "Sometimes we talk, but not like fighting. Not in front of everyone, not when someone is angry." Then she looked toward the kitchen, where her mother was moving quietly. "My mother knows I want to leave. She knew before I said it." "How?" Molly smiled. "She is Thai mother. She knows everything." We both laughed softly. Then she continued, "In Bangkok, I learned to speak more directly. But when I came home, I forgot that my words can feel heavy here." She touched the wooden step beside her. "This house is small. If we hurt each other, where do we go?" That sentence changed something in me. In large cities, people could argue and disappear into crowds. They could shut doors, block numbers, move apartments, find new circles. But in a village, relationships were not disposable. The person you disagreed with today might help you repair your roof tomorrow. The neighbor whose opinion annoyed you might bring food when your father became ill. The cousin who frustrated you might stand beside you at a funeral. Here, harmony was not decoration. It was survival. Later that day, Mae, Lada, and Molly went to the temple together. They did not announce a serious conversation. They did not sit across from each other like opponents. They simply walked side by side beneath umbrellas along the wet road. I followed at a distance with my notebook. The temple stood beneath old trees. Orange robes moved quietly between the buildings. Incense curled into the damp air. A dog slept near the steps of the Viharn, one ear twitching in a dream. Mae, Lada, and Molly placed flowers before the Buddha image. They knelt. They bowed. Then they sat together beneath the eaves while rain began again, light and silver. I could not hear everything they said, only pieces. Mae Lada's voice was soft. "You can go." Molly was quiet. Then Mae Lada said, "But do not leave because you think this place is too small for you. Leave because your heart is walking somewhere." Molly wiped her face. Mae Lada touched her daughter's arm, not dramatically, not like in a film, just once, lightly, as if saying, "I am here." That was the conversation. No shouting, no accusation, no demand for victory. And yet, somehow, the truth had been spoken. That evening, back at the wooden house, dinner felt different. Molly helped her mother prepare vegetables. Arun repaired a broken chair. I sat near the doorway, listening to rain fall steadily on the roof. Nobody explained everything to me. Nobody needed to. I began to understand that Thai communication often moved like water, not always in a straight line, not always loud, not always visible on the surface, but it found its way around rocks, through roots, into the soil. And sometimes that softness carried more strength than force. Before bed, Mae Lada handed me a cup of warm tea. She pointed to my notebook and asked, "You write about Thai people?" "Yes," I said. She smiled, then write slowly. I looked at her. She laughed softly. "If you write fast, you only see the outside." That night, I wrote one sentence at the top of a fresh page. Thai people do not always avoid confrontation. Sometimes they protect the heart of the conversation until it is safe enough to speak. Outside, the village settled into sleep. The rain softened. A gecko clicked from the wall. Somewhere in the darkness, a temple bell sounded once, gentle and low. And for the first time since arriving in Thailand, I wondered how many truths I had missed simply because I expected them to be spoken loudly. Chapter 2. The market where no one raised their voice. The next morning, I followed Arun to the village market. I still believed silence meant avoidance, but the market taught me something different. It taught me that Thai people could disagree without turning disagreement into war. The market opened before sunrise, when the sky was still blue and quiet. Mist rested above the road. Motorbikes arrived slowly, their headlights glowing like fireflies. Women unfolded tables. Men carried baskets of vegetables still damp with earth. Someone was frying dough in hot oil, and the sweet smell drifted through the morning like a soft invitation. There were bananas stacked in green and yellow piles, long beans tied with rubber bands, fresh herbs wrapped in newspaper, fish lying silver and still on beds of ice, coconut milk in plastic bags, curry pastes red, green, and orange beneath warm lamps. Everything was alive with small sounds. The chopping of garlic, the splash of water, the whisper of plastic bags, the low hum of bargaining voices, the tiny bell of a bicycle passing behind us. At one vegetable stall, Arun stopped to buy morning glory. The seller was an older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair tied neatly at the back of her head. She smiled when she saw him. "Arun, today you come late." He laughed. "Late? The sun is not even awake." She placed a bundle of greens into a bag. Then another man arrived. He was younger, perhaps in his 20s, wearing a black t-shirt and sandals. He picked up a bunch of coriander, looked at the price, and frowned. "This is expensive," he said. The old woman looked at him calmly. "Then buy only half." "But yesterday it was cheaper." Yesterday was yesterday. Her voice stayed light, almost playful. The young man did not smile. He pointed to another stall across the lane. "Over there, cheaper." The old woman nodded. "Then over there has good luck today." A few people nearby laughed softly, but not cruelly. The young man's face tightened. I expected him to argue. I expected the air to become sharp. Instead, Arun stepped slightly closer and said, "Brother, rain came last night. Herbs are difficult today." The young man looked at Arun. The old woman adjusted the bag of vegetables without looking offended. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the young man sighed. "Okay, give me half." The old woman gave him more than half. He noticed. His expression changed. "Auntie, this is too much." She waved her hand. "You complained well, I reward you." People laughed again. This time, the young man laughed too. The problem passed like a small cloud over the sun. I stood beside Arun, amazed by how gently the disagreement had been held. No one declared victory. No one humiliated anyone. No one said, "You are wrong." No one demanded an apology. And yet the issue had been solved. As we walked away, I asked Arun, "Was that confrontation?" He thought for a moment. "Yes, but Thai style." "What does that mean?" He carried the vegetables in one hand and smiled. "It means everyone can still come back tomorrow." That sentence stayed with me. Everyone can still come back tomorrow. In my own world, confrontation often felt final. People spoke as if the relationship could be sacrificed for the truth. The important thing was to be clear, to be right, to make the point. But here, the point was not the only thing that mattered. The path back to each other mattered too. We stopped at a small coffee stall. where an old man poured dark coffee through a cloth filter. Steam rose into the cool morning. Condensed milk curled into the glass like pale clouds. Arun ordered for both of us. We sat on plastic stools beside the road. The market moved around us slowly. A woman arranged marigold garlands. A monk walked past with an alms bowl. A child in a school uniform yawned while holding his grandmother's hand. I asked Arun, "Why is losing face so important here?" He took a sip of coffee. "Because face is not only pride," he said, "it is dignity." I waited. He looked across the market. If you correct someone too strongly in public, maybe you win, but they feel small. And when people feel small, their heart closes. He touched his chest lightly. Then they cannot hear you. The old coffee seller, who had been listening while cleaning glasses, joined in. "Farang like straight road," he said in English, smiling. I laughed. "Yes, maybe." He pointed down the village lane. Thai roads sometimes curve. Then he lifted his hand and made a gentle winding motion through the air. "Still arrive." Arun laughed. "Uncle says Thai people go around the mountain." The old man nodded. "Why climb and fall? Walk around. See flowers also." I wrote that down immediately. Why climb and fall? Walk around. See flowers also. It sounded like a joke, but it was philosophy. Later that morning, we returned to Mae Lada's house. The sun had risen behind pale clouds. The wet road shone softly. Dogs slept in doorways. Smoke rose from a nearby kitchen, carrying the scent of grilled chilies. Molly was sitting outside, cutting mangoes. She looked up as we arrived. "You went to market?" "Yes," I said. "I learned that Thai people can argue about coriander without arguing." She laughed. "That is an important skill." I sat near her while Arun carried the vegetables inside. Molly handed me a slice of mango. "In Thailand," she said, "we often think about the feeling after the words." "The feeling after the words?" "Yes. In English, maybe you think, did I say the truth? But here, we also think, can this person sleep tonight after hearing me?" I looked at her. The mango was sweet and cool in my hand. She continued, "It does not mean we lie. It means we choose the shape of truth." The shape of truth. That was another phrase I wrote down. A truth could be a stone, or it could be water. A stone could break a window. Water could enter the soil and still change everything. That afternoon, I sat beneath the house while rain began again. It came gently at first, then heavier, drumming on the tin roof. The air smelled of wet leaves and cooking rice. Mae Lada was weaving a small basket beside me. Her fingers moved with quiet certainty. I asked her, "Mae, do you think Thai people avoid confrontation?" She did not answer immediately. She pulled a strip of bamboo through the weave. Then she said, "Some people avoid because they are afraid. That is true everywhere." She looked at me, "But many people avoid hurting." I nodded slowly. She continued weaving. "If your words are sharp, you must know where they will cut." The rain grew louder. For a while, we listened to it together. Then she added, "When I was young, my father told me, before you speak, ask 3 things." She raised one finger. "Is it true?" A second finger. "Is it useful?" A third. "Is this the right time?" She lowered her hand. Many foreigners stop at the first one. I smiled, because she was right. I had often worshipped truth without considering timing. I had believed honesty gave me permission to be careless, but in this village, honesty was treated like fire. Useful, powerful, necessary, but dangerous when handled without care. That evening, a small problem happened. A neighbor's goat had entered Mae Lada's garden and eaten several young plants near the fence. In my mind, this was exactly the kind of situation that required direct confrontation. Someone had caused damage. Someone should be told. Someone should apologize. But Mae Lada did not march angrily to the neighbor's house. Instead, she picked up the damaged leaves, placed them in a basket, and said to Arun, "Tomorrow, help me fix the fence." I looked at her. "You won't tell the neighbor?" She smiled. "He knows." "How?" She pointed toward the lane. The neighbor, an elderly man named Uncle Prasert, was standing outside his house, looking toward the garden with a very guilty expression. Mae Lada did not call out. Uncle Prisert lifted one hand awkwardly. Mae Lada lifted hers back. That was all. The next morning, before anyone asked, Uncle Prosser arrived carrying 2 small banana trees. He placed them near Mae Lada's fence. "Mae," he said, "my goat has bad manners." Mae Lada laughed. "Your goat eats like a businessman." He laughed too. Then he helped Arun repair the fence. No accusation had been spoken. No shame had been poured into the street. But responsibility still arrived, quietly, on its own feet. I began to see that confrontation in Thailand was not absent. It was often indirect, softened, delayed, or wrapped in humor. But it was still there. A glance could say, "I know." A pause could say, "Be careful." A joke could say, "Please correct this." A gift could say, "I am sorry." A shared meal could say, "Let us begin again." I had spent years listening only for loud honesty. Thailand was teaching me to hear quiet honesty. That night, after dinner, Arun and I walked along the road. The rain had stopped. The air was cool and full of the smell of wet grass. Tiny frogs jumped across the path. In the distance, temple lights glowed gold beneath dark trees. I asked him, "Do you ever wish people here were more direct?" He thought for a long time. "Sometimes," he said. His honesty surprised me. Sometimes indirectness can become hiding. Sometimes people smile but feel angry. Sometimes problems grow because nobody speaks. He looked at me carefully. "So it is not perfect." I appreciated that. He was not trying to turn Thai culture into something magical. He was not saying every silence was wise or every indirect word was kind. He was saying something more human. Every culture has a shadow. Directness can become cruelty. Indirectness can become avoidance. Honesty can become pride. Harmony can become silence. The wisdom is knowing the difference. We walked past a house where an old woman was watching television through an open doorway. The blue light flickered across her face. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing a soft Luk Thung song on the radio. Arun said, "Maybe the best way is not Thai or Western." "What is it?" He smiled. "To speak truth without making the other person feel alone." I stopped walking for a moment. The words settled into me slowly. To speak truth without making the other person feel alone. Perhaps that was what I had been missing. I had thought confrontation was about courage, but maybe the deeper courage was tenderness. The courage to wait. The courage to choose gentle words. The courage to protect dignity. The courage to solve a problem without destroying a person. When we returned home, Mae Lada had left a small lamp burning near the doorway. Moths circled the light. The wooden floor was cool beneath my feet. In my notebook, I wrote, "In Thailand, many disagreements do not disappear. They simply travel by softer roads." Then I closed the notebook. Outside, the village breathed in darkness. The repaired fence stood quietly in the rain-washed garden. And somewhere beyond the trees, Uncle Praser's goat made a soft, guilty sound. Chapter 3. The lesson beneath the banyan tree. A few days later, the rain finally stopped. The sky above northern Thailand opened into a soft blue, washed clean after nearly a week of storms. The mountains appeared sharper in the distance. The rice fields reflected sunlight like mirrors. Water buffalo stood knee-deep in muddy ponds, flicking their tails lazily at invisible flies. The village seemed to breathe differently after rain. Children returned to playing outside. Women swept fallen leaves from their yards. Motorbikes moved along dry roads once again. And everywhere, people emerged from their homes as if waking from a long dream. That morning, Arun invited me to visit the village temple. "We have a ceremony today," he said. "What kind of ceremony?" He shrugged. "Nothing special." I had already learned that when Thai people said something was nothing special, it was often surprisingly meaningful. So I followed him. The temple stood on a small hill overlooking the village. Ancient trees surrounded the grounds. Birds sang from high branches. Orange-robed monks moved quietly between white buildings. The scent of incense drifted through the warm air. Near the entrance stood a giant banyan tree. Its roots hung from the branches like long ropes. Its trunk was enormous, perhaps older than anyone living in the village. Perhaps older than their grandparents. maybe older than the village itself. Beneath the tree sat an elderly monk named Luang Por Chai. He looked as old as the roots around him. His face carried deep lines. His movements were slow, but his eyes seemed strangely young, bright, calm, observant. Villagers approached him throughout the morning. Some brought food. Some brought flowers. Some simply sat nearby and spoke quietly. No one appeared rushed. No one interrupted. No one seemed concerned about efficiency. Everything moved at the pace of conversation, the pace of listening, the pace of patience. I sat beside Arun beneath the shade of the banyan tree. The leaves above us rustled softly in the breeze. For a long time, we simply watched. Then something happened. A middle-aged man arrived looking upset. His name was Somchai. I recognized him from the market. He owned a small repair shop near the road. Today, however, he did not look calm. His shoulders were tense. His face was tight. His steps were quick. He bowed respectfully to Luang Porchai and sat down. The monk smiled. "What troubles you?" Somchai sighed heavily. "My younger brother." The monk nodded. Somchai continued. "He borrowed money." A pause. "He promised to return it." Another pause. "He did not." I expected the story to become dramatic. But Somchai spoke slowly, without shouting, without insults, simply tired. The monk listened quietly, not interrupting, not offering immediate solutions, not correcting, just listening. After several minutes, Somchai finally asked, "What should I do?" The monk looked toward the banyan tree. The leaves moved gently above us. Then he asked, "When was the last time you shared a meal with your brother?" Somchai blinked. The question clearly surprised him. "A meal?" The monk nodded. "Yes." Somchai thought, "Months." The monk smiled softly. "Then perhaps begin there." I looked at Arun. Surely there had to be more advice than that. Money had been borrowed. Promises had been broken. And the monk wanted them to have lunch together, but nobody seemed surprised. Nobody laughed. Nobody questioned the answer. The conversation continued. The monk explained, "If you start with the money, both hearts become hard." He tapped his chest lightly. "If you start with a relationship, maybe the money can still be discussed." Somchai sat quietly, listening, thinking. Finally, he nodded. Not because the problem had disappeared, but because he seemed to understand something. When he left, his shoulders looked lighter. Not solved, but lighter. As he walked away, I turned toward Arun. "Is that normal?" "What?" The monk never answered directly. Arun smiled. He answered, but not about the money. He answered the bigger problem. I considered that perhaps he had. Perhaps the broken relationship mattered more than the unpaid debt. Perhaps fixing the connection created space to solve everything else. The idea stayed with me throughout the day. That afternoon, villagers gathered in the temple courtyard. Children ran between tables. Women arranged food beneath colorful umbrellas. Men carried large pots of soup. The atmosphere felt relaxed and welcoming. At one point, I found myself sitting beside an elderly man named Grandpa Lek. He wore a faded blue shirt and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen many decades pass. We watched children chase each other across the temple grounds. Then he suddenly asked, "In your country, do people argue a lot?" I laughed. "Sometimes." He nodded. "I can tell." "You can?" He smiled. "You speak very directly." I laughed again. "Fair enough." After a moment, he continued, "When I was young, I thought direct people were brave. What changed?" He looked toward the children. "Then I got married." I nearly laughed out loud. He smiled knowingly. "My wife taught me something." "What?" He leaned closer. Winning an argument and improving a relationship are not always the same thing. The words landed heavily because I knew he was right. I thought about old arguments in my own life. Arguments I had technically won. Arguments where my facts had been correct. Arguments where my logic had been stronger. Arguments where I had walked away feeling victorious. And yet, somehow the relationship had become weaker afterward. Sometimes much weaker. Grandpa Lek continued, "If you only protect your pride, you may lose your people." The afternoon breeze moved through the banyan leaves. A bell rang softly somewhere in the temple. Children laughed. Monks walked quietly past carrying bowls. The entire scene felt peaceful. Yet beneath the peace, I sensed something deeper, a different philosophy, a different understanding of human relationships. One that valued harmony not because conflict was evil, but because relationships were precious. That evening, after returning home, I sat outside with Molly. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and orange. Birds crossed above the fields. The air smelled faintly of jasmine. For a while, we watched the fading light. Then I asked her, "When you lived in Bangkok, did you become more direct?" She smiled, "Definitely. And did your family notice?" She laughed. "Oh yes. What happened?" She thought for a moment. "One day I came home and told my mother exactly what I thought about something. And my mother listened." A pause. "Then she served me fruit." I laughed. "That's all? That's all. What did that mean?" Molly grinned. It meant she disagreed. "How?" "Because she gave me fruit instead of answering." I stared at her. She laughed harder. "You still don't understand Thailand." "Apparently not." She explained. "In many Thai families, silence is communication." I nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to realize that." She continued. "My mother wasn't ignoring me. What was she doing?" "Giving me time." The answer sounded familiar. Time, cooling, space, patience. These themes appeared again and again, like threads woven through every conversation. Perhaps that was the lesson I kept encountering. Thai people were not necessarily avoiding confrontation. They were slowing it down, allowing emotions to settle, allowing dignity to remain intact, allowing everyone involved to return safely from disagreement. As darkness settled over the village, fireflies began appearing above the fields. Tiny floating lights, moving slowly through the night. Beautiful, peaceful, gentle. Molly pointed toward them. When I was little, my grandmother used to compare arguments to catching fireflies. How? She watched the lights drift through the darkness. If you grab too hard, you kill the light. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The fireflies continued floating through the warm night air. And I thought about all the conversations I had approached with clenched fists instead of open hands. All the truths I had thrown instead of offered. All the relationships that had suffered because I valued being understood more than understanding. The village grew quieter. Lights disappeared one by one. Dogs settled into sleep. The moon rose above the distant mountains. And beneath that peaceful sky, I began to see something I had never fully understood before. Thai culture was not built around avoiding conflict. It was built around preserving connection. Not perfectly, not always successfully, but intentionally. Because in a world where people depend on one another, relationships are not disposable. They are gardens, and gardens require care. Careful words, careful timing, careful listening. Before going to bed, I opened my notebook. The pages were beginning to fill. I looked back at my first impressions of Thailand. Many now seemed incomplete. Some seemed entirely wrong. On a fresh page, I wrote, "The opposite of confrontation is not silence. The opposite of confrontation is disconnection." Then I added another line beneath it. Thai people often protect the relationship first so that the truth still has a place to live. Outside, the banyan tree near the temple stood quietly beneath the moonlight. Its roots reached deep into the earth. Its branches stretched wide across the night sky. And somewhere beneath those ancient leaves, an old monk sat peacefully, teaching lessons that sounded simple, but carried the wisdom of generations. Chapter 4. The Wedding Where Nobody Said No. A week after the ceremony at the temple, the village prepared for a wedding. In many countries, weddings are celebrations. In Thailand, I was beginning to realize they are also demonstrations of community. For days beforehand, people moved in and out of one another's homes carrying tables, chairs, flowers, food, and supplies. Nobody seemed to be officially in charge. Yet, somehow, everything worked. An aunt arrived with baskets of fruit. A neighbor brought ice. Someone borrowed cooking equipment from another village. Teenagers hung decorations beneath trees. Older women prepared ingredients for meals large enough to feed hundreds. The entire village seemed connected by invisible threads. Everyone helping, everyone participating, everyone understanding their role without needing instructions. The bride's family lived only a short walk from Mae Lada's house. Their home sat beside a pond where lotus flowers floated on still water. Tall coconut trees swayed gently in the breeze. The scent of jasmine drifted through the air. Colorful lanterns hung from bamboo poles. By the evening before the wedding, the entire property glowed with warm light. Children ran everywhere. Music played softly from speakers. People laughed beneath the stars. The atmosphere felt joyful, peaceful, almost magical. And then, unexpectedly, a problem appeared. I first noticed it when the conversations became quieter. Not silent, just different, subtle, like a change in the wind before rain. Several women stood together, speaking in low voices. Men gathered near the cooking area. People exchanged glances. Nobody looked angry, but something was happening. I eventually learned the reason. The groom's uncle had become upset. Apparently, there had been confusion regarding seating arrangements and family responsibilities during the ceremony. Nothing enormous, nothing dramatic, yet important enough that feelings had been hurt. Back home, I imagined this situation becoming direct very quickly. People would identify the problem, discuss it openly, perhaps argue, perhaps defend themselves, perhaps assign blame. But that was not what happened. Instead, the village entered a process I could barely see. The groom's uncle was invited to sit with several older relatives. Tea was served. Food appeared. Conversation wandered through many subjects. The weather, the rice harvest, children, traffic in Bangkok, football, everything except the actual problem. At first, I thought they were avoiding the issue entirely. But as I watched more carefully, I began to notice something. The conversation itself was the solution. They were rebuilding warmth before addressing disagreement, strengthening the bridge before sending heavy weight across it. An hour later, I saw the bride's father walk over. He sat down calmly. No dramatic speech, no confrontation, no accusations. Just another cup of tea, more conversation, more listening, more laughter. Eventually, the groom's uncle smiled, then laughed, then accepted another serving of food. By sunset, the tension had disappeared, or perhaps transformed. Either way, peace had returned. That evening, I asked Mae Lada about it. We were sitting outside beneath a sky full of stars. Crickets sang from the fields. The air felt cool after sunset. How did they solve it? I asked. Mae Lada smiled. They talked, but they hardly mentioned the problem. She nodded. Yes. I waited for more explanation. Finally, she said, if a rope is already tight, pulling harder does not help. I thought about that. The image made sense. Sometimes pressure creates resistance. Sometimes easing tension creates movement. She continued, many foreigners think Thai people communicate with words. I laughed softly. Don't they? Sometimes. She smiled. But often we communicate with feeling. The phrase lingered in the warm night air. Communicate with feeling. Perhaps that was what I had been witnessing all along. People paying attention not only to what was said, but also to how hearts were responding, to pride, to embarrassment, to dignity, to emotion, to the invisible landscape beneath every conversation. The next morning, the wedding day arrived. Before sunrise, the village was already awake. Roosters crowed. Motorbikes arrived carrying relatives. Food vendors prepared breakfast. Monks walked through the village collecting alms. Golden sunlight slowly spread across the rice fields. Everything felt alive. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Traditional music drifted through the air. Families gathered together. Children sat quietly beside grandparents. Monks offered blessings. The bride wore an elegant Thai dress. The groom looked nervous and happy at the same time. Everyone smiled. Everyone laughed. Everyone seemed connected. At one point, I noticed the groom's uncle again. He was helping organize chairs, joking with relatives, speaking cheerfully with the bride's father. No trace remained of yesterday's disagreement. Watching him, I realized something. The goal had never been to prove who was right. The goal had been to restore harmony, and once harmony returned, the original issue lost much of its power. Later that afternoon, I found myself sitting beside Grandma Noi, one of the oldest women in the village. She must have been in her 80s, perhaps older. Nobody seemed entirely sure. Her face carried countless lines. Her eyes sparkled with quiet intelligence. She watched the wedding while gently fanning herself. I asked her, why do Thai people dislike direct confrontation so much? She laughed immediately, a warm, amused laugh. Then she shook her head. You still ask the wrong question. That surprised me. What is the right question? She pointed toward the wedding guests, toward families sitting together, toward children playing nearby, toward neighbors sharing food, toward generations gathered beneath the same roof. Then she asked, how do people live together for 50 years? I looked around. Everyone seemed connected somehow. Families, neighbors, friends, relatives, people who had known one another their entire lives. Grandma Noi continued, if you only speak to win, eventually you stand alone. The wedding music played softly in the background. The smell of grilled chicken drifted through the air. Children laughed near the pond. She looked at me kindly. Thai people are not always afraid of conflict. Then what? We are afraid of breaking things that cannot easily be repaired. That sentence settled deeply inside me. Breaking things that cannot easily be repaired. Relationships, trust, respect, community. Once damaged, these things often take years to rebuild, sometimes longer. Perhaps that was why people here moved carefully, not because they lacked courage, but because they understood consequences. As the afternoon faded into evening, guests began sharing stories. Some sang songs, others told jokes. Older relatives spoke about weddings from decades earlier. The atmosphere became softer, more reflective, more peaceful. And throughout it all, I kept thinking about something Grandpa Lek had said beneath the banyan tree. Winning an argument and improving a relationship are not always the same thing. The more time I spent in Thailand, the more true that seemed. Back home, I had often treated conversations like competitions. Questions had winners. Debates had winners. Disagreements had winners. But here, conversations felt different. More collaborative, more relational, less concerned with victory, more concerned with continuity. Could everyone still sit together tomorrow? Could everyone still share a meal next week? Could everyone still attend the same wedding next year? Those questions mattered, perhaps more than being right. That evening, after most guests had gone home, a few of us remained beneath the lanterns. The wedding decorations swayed gently in the breeze. The pond reflected moonlight. The village had grown quiet. Molly sat beside me. You've been thinking a lot, she said. Is it that obvious? She laughed. Very. For a moment, we watched the lanterns move softly above us. Then I said, I think I'm beginning to understand. Understand what? Why confrontation feels different here. She nodded. And? I took my time answering, because I wanted to be careful. Because Thailand had taught me that some thoughts deserve patience. Finally, I said, I thought direct confrontation was the only honest way. Molly smiled. But now I think there are different kinds of honesty. The lantern light reflected in the pond. The air smelled faintly of flowers and wood smoke. Molly waited, so I continued. One honesty speaks immediately. She nodded. And the other? One honesty waits until people can actually hear it. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Molly smiled, a very Thai answer. We both laughed, and somewhere in the darkness, a gecko clicked from a nearby wall. The wedding slowly faded into memory. Guests returned home. Lanterns dimmed. Music stopped. The village settled once again beneath the stars. Before going to sleep, I opened my notebook. The pages were nearly full now. On a fresh page, I wrote, in Thailand, preserving a relationship is often considered part of solving the problem, not separate from it. Then I added another line. Sometimes people do not avoid confrontation. They simply refuse to sacrifice kindness in order to have it. I closed the notebook. Outside, the last wedding lantern moved gently in the night breeze. And as I watched its warm light against the darkness, I wondered how many conflicts in my own life might have ended differently if I had cared less about winning and more about remaining connected. Chapter 5. The conversation I finally understood. My final week in the village arrived quietly. There was no announcement, no special moment, no dramatic realization, just the slow awareness that my time there was ending. The rainy season continued its gentle rhythm. Some mornings began with sunshine. Others began with mist drifting across the rice fields. The mountains appeared and disappeared behind clouds. Life continued exactly as it always had, and somehow that made leaving more difficult. I had arrived believing I would stay for only a few days. Instead, weeks had passed, long enough for faces to become familiar, long enough for strangers to become friends, long enough for the village to begin feeling like part of my life. Each morning I drank coffee at the market. Each evening I shared dinner with Mae Lada's family. Each day I filled pages in my notebook. And each day Thailand quietly challenged another assumption I had carried with me for years. One afternoon, a few days before my departure, something happened that finally connected everything. It began with a phone call. Molly had been sitting outside beneath the shade of a mango tree. The afternoon air was warm. Birds moved through the branches overhead. Somewhere nearby, a radio played an old Thai song. Then her phone rang. At first, she spoke normally, then more quietly. Then she stopped speaking altogether. For nearly a minute, she simply listened. When the call ended, she remained sitting still, looking at nothing, thinking. I could tell something was wrong, yet I remembered what I had learned. Instead of immediately asking questions, I waited. A few minutes later, she looked toward me. My friend in Bangkok. I nodded. Everything okay? She smiled sadly. Not really. I waited again. The silence felt natural now, comfortable, not empty. After a while, she continued. My friend and her sister haven't spoken for almost 2 years. I looked surprised. What happened? They argued. About what? Molly shrugged. Something small. That answer felt impossible. 2 years of silence because of something small? She seemed to understand my confusion. The argument was small. A pause. The pride afterward was not. We sat quietly beneath the mango tree. The leaves above us moved gently in the breeze. The afternoon sunlight flickered across the grass. Then Molly said something I will remember long after leaving Thailand. Most relationships don't end because of one conversation. She looked toward the fields. They end because nobody repairs the bridge afterward. The bridge. Again, that image. Throughout my stay, people had spoken about bridges without ever using the word directly. Preserving connection, protecting dignity, allowing people to return, saving face, maintaining harmony. All of it pointed toward the same thing, keeping the bridge standing. That evening, the village held a small gathering at the temple. Nothing unusual. Just neighbors sharing food after evening prayers. Families sat together beneath trees. Children played near the steps. Older people talked quietly. The atmosphere felt peaceful. The sky slowly darkened from blue to violet. Temple bells echoed softly through the evening air. I found myself sitting once again beneath the great banyan tree. The same tree where I had watched villagers seek advice from Luang Por Chai. The old monk was there, sitting calmly beneath the roots, watching the village around him. Eventually, he looked toward me. You are leaving soon. It wasn't a question. I smiled. Yes. He nodded. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he asked, what have you learned? The question felt surprisingly difficult. I looked around the temple grounds. Children laughing, neighbors talking, families eating together, monks walking quietly through the fading light. Then I answered honestly. I came here believing Thai people avoided confrontation. The monk smiled. And now? I took a deep breath. Now, how could I explain everything? The market, the wedding, the family dinners, the conversations, the silences, the lessons hidden inside ordinary moments. Finally, I said, I think Thai people understand something I didn't. The monk waited. I continued. I thought truth was the most important thing in a disagreement. And now, I looked toward the villagers, people who depended on one another, people who would meet again tomorrow, and next week, and next year. Then I said, I think relationships matter too. The monk smiled, not because I had discovered something extraordinary, but because I had finally noticed something simple, the kind of truth that hides in plain sight. The kind of truth people overlook because it is everywhere. After a moment, he said, "When people talk about peace, they often imagine a world without conflict." The evening breeze moved gently through the banyan leaves. The monk continued, "But peace is not the absence of conflict." He touched the ground beside him. "It is the ability to return to one another afterward." The words settled deep inside me. Return to one another afterward. Perhaps that was the entire lesson. Not avoiding every disagreement. Not pretending problems did not exist. Not suppressing emotions forever. Simply making sure that when conflict arrived, as it inevitably does, people could still find their way back. Back to conversation. Back to understanding. Back to connection. Back to each other. The temple gathering slowly came to an end. Families began returning home, the sky filled with stars. The village lights appeared one by one in the darkness. And for the first time since arriving in Thailand, I felt I understood something important. Not everything. Certainly not. Thailand remained wonderfully complex, but one piece had become clear. Many Thai people do not avoid direct confrontation because they are weak. They avoid it because relationships are valuable, because dignity matters, because community matters, because words have consequences, because tomorrow still exists. The next morning was my last day in the village. I woke before sunrise. Mist covered the fields. The world felt soft and quiet, like a painting made of clouds. Mae Lada was already awake, preparing breakfast. The familiar smell of rice and herbs filled the house. Arun sat at the table drinking coffee. Molly was feeding scraps to the village dogs outside. Everything felt ordinary. And because it felt ordinary, it felt precious. After breakfast, it was time to leave. My bag waited near the door. The bus would arrive soon. One by one, everyone gathered outside. No dramatic speeches, no emotional declarations. Just smiles, warm hands, quiet gratitude. Very Thai. Mae Lada handed me a small package wrapped in paper. Inside was a notebook, handmade, simple, beautiful. "For your writing," she said. I thanked her. Then she smiled and added, "Write slowly." The same advice she had given me weeks earlier. Only now I understood it. Write slowly. Listen slowly. Judge slowly. Understand slowly. Some truths reveal themselves only when we stop rushing toward conclusions. The bus arrived. Its engine hummed softly. The door opened. I shook hands with Arun. Molly hugged me. Mae Lada pressed her palms together and smiled. Then I climbed aboard. As the bus pulled away, the village slowly disappeared behind trees and morning mist. The rice fields passed outside the window. The mountains faded into the distance. And I opened the notebook she had given me. On the first page, I wrote, "Before coming to Thailand, I believed direct confrontation was a sign of honesty." Then I paused. The road curved gently through the countryside. Sunlight touched the fields. A farmer walked beside a water buffalo. Life continued peacefully beyond the window. I wrote another sentence. Now I think true wisdom is knowing how to speak honestly without breaking the relationship that must carry the truth. The bus continued south. The village grew smaller, then disappeared completely. But the lesson remained. Not every silence is fear. Not every smile is agreement. Not every indirect answer is avoidance. Sometimes people choose gentleness because they understand how fragile human connection can be. And perhaps that is one of the quiet secrets of Thailand. A country where many people believe that being right is important, but being able to sit together afterward may be even more important. As the morning sun rose higher above the mountains, I closed the notebook. Outside, Thailand unfolded endlessly before me. Temples, fields, villages, roads, lives, stories, and somewhere ahead, another misunderstanding waited to be challenged. Another lesson waited to be discovered. Another journey waited to begin. But for now, there was only the gentle movement of the bus, the warmth of sunlight through the window, and the peaceful understanding that sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who speak the loudest. Sometimes they are the ones who know how to protect both the truth and the heart that receives it, the end. Thailand still holds countless stories waiting to be discovered. If you would like to continue this journey together, I hope to see you again in the next story from Thailand through eyes. And if there is somewhere in Thailand you wish to visit through story, leave your suggestion below. Perhaps our next journey will begin there.